It's spring week 8 here in Apothecaria, and in this Cure episode, Mistress Sweetwater meets the mayor. Hey there everyone, welcome to Drawing Expressions. I'm Parz, and yeah, we are now in week 8 of the Apothecaria-based episodic series that I have been doing now for, I can't remember, but it's been a long while. And yeah, this is the newest episode, Meeting the Mayor. And we'll find out more about all of that after we get through a couple of things that I always like to start with. For instance, the guidelines. Knowing that guidelines are always there, they will never fail you. Rules, well, they can, they will. Give them time, they will. Over here with the planner and the pantser sections. So the planner section, it's the same as always, which by design. How about that? It's a plan. So it's the narration of the episode plus everything that went into it and how it was made. For the pantser section today, we're going to be talking about conflict without combat. So I thought that would be an interesting little topic to bring up. But now, let's do some breathing and some stretching. So we're going to sit up nice and tall and have our butt bones on the chair or on the floor or wherever the heck you are. And we're going to take a nice deep breath in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Deep breath in. And stretch. Nothing severe. Never something severe. I tell you, there seems like there's more cracks and pops every day. Okay. Let's start, let's just start. Why not? And it's called Meeting the Mayor. Good morning. Sleep well? I have to admit that I love to linger in bed in the morning to have daylight move from soft pink glow to bright white that pours in through the window. There's a warmth, a peace, a serenity that exists early in the day, the quality of which is unmatched at any other time. And stretched out in bed, relaxed with all the cares of the world not knocking on my door or tapping me on the shoulder, it's heaven. So for my eyes to report a very bleary yet very alert familiar sitting on my chest, eyes bright and whiskers twitching away, wasn't welcome. But I wasn't awake enough to complain. Much. Was he? I also managed to stretch and yawn in accompaniment to my brilliant question. Mouse eyes stayed firmly fixed as I made motions to get up. Have you checked in on Fen lately? I stopped stretching and was insta-awake. What, is he okay? But you should check on him. There was still this energy, this eagerness that Mouse Eye was annoyingly radiating. Okay, so if it's not an emergency, I think I'll take my time, eat some breakfast, then walk over. Must you? I closed my eyes, took a breath, counted to 10, then tried again. How about if I skip my pleasant start of the day activities and instead walk over to check on Fen? Great idea. I'll see you there. And with that, he leapt off me and landed not in the cottage. I don't know if I'll ever get used to his disappearing trick. Since I was essentially being rushed out to check in on Fen in a non-emergency situation, I tossed on a nightshirt, slipped on some shoes, and headed for Fen's place. Fen, the fen toad who'd come home with me after a bog goblin attack, had settled in nicely next to the little stream where I gather water. A huge tree grows there, creating shade under its huge canopy. I can see myself spending a lot of time there during the heat of summer. The net result was that I would collect water from there and would sometimes see Fen. I hadn't seen him for a couple of days, so my level of concern was high, despite Mouse Eyes' assurance that nothing was amiss with him. It's a relaxing short walk to the stream and tree, a couple of minutes most days. Today's trip was shorter because I was walking quickly. As I approached, I started calling Fenn's name, hoping he'd hop out and let me know everything was okay. I called. Fenn hopped out. I smiled in relief. Fenn looked up into the tree. I followed his gaze. My jaw dropped. Mouse Eye appeared in the tree with a big grin, then disappeared again, but far from laughing with him, I was busy picking my jaw up off the ground. You see, on a large bough and leaning against the trunk sat a man. An older man, a quite large older man, a half-naked, in only underthings, quite large older man, snoring. A bewildering array of questions began to demand access to my now quite alert thinking apparatus. Who is he? Why is he here? Why are his shirt and trousers lying on the ground? And how did he get up there? I mean, it'd be hard for me to climb up there, so how? I approached, slowly, cautiously. Hello, sir? Hello? Then I stepped back a few paces. I watched as he woke up. He somehow simultaneously nearly lost his balance, cradled his head, and made as if he was going to be sick. Oh, my head, he groaned. I called up again. Hello, sir. Please, not so loud. Oh. Are you unwell? It's only that I feel like death. And where am I? I told him. He nodded, then leaned his head back against the tree again. Did you eat or drink something that didn't agree with you? Eat? No. Drink? I don't think I had that much last night. Okay, make that a very hungover, half-naked, quite large older man. Sir, let me see what I have in the cottage for hangovers. I'll be back in a minute. He just groaned again. As I made my way to the cottage, Mouse Eye reappeared on my shoulder, laughing. I don't understand why someone suffering from a hangover can be seen as so funny to some. So I asked him. He shrugged. It's funny. How are we going to get him down from there? Because him falling and possibly breaking a bone won't be funny at all. Mouse Eye just laughed again. I'm not sure how a mouse is supposed to be of help with this issue. I was hoping you'd have an idea for getting him down. I wasn't suggesting you sling him over your shoulder and bodily carry him down. Mouse Eye shrugged. He got up there. I'm sure he can get down, just like a cat can, you know. As we'd been talking, I'd looked up hangovers in the old witch's book. Crow coal, the first reagent I'd ever picked up, was perfect. I brewed up 2 cups of tea, added crushed crow coal into one, and headed back. The man was still in the tree. Sir, I called up, I've got a remedy for your hangover here, but you're going to have to get yourself down from there. I have no idea how I got up here, but I suppose if I managed it, I can get myself down. Stand clear. I watched as he maneuvered himself one way, then the other, then stopped. It might be easier if I had my clothes. The bark is sure to hurt otherwise. I tossed up his clothes. They were relatively clean, but did stink of smoke and drink. As he struggled to put them on, I asked, Why did you take your clothes off last night? I don't remember taking them off, but I can only guess I worked up a sweat getting up here. I'm glad to have them now. It's quite chilly. Whether the chill was from the coolness of the stream or another symptom of the hangover, I wasn't sure, but it was good to see that he managed to dress himself, more or less. That could only help to make him more comfortable and pad against injuries from disembarking from the branch. He took a minute to rest, then tried getting down again. It was awkward and probably not the way he got up there, but a bit of effort and a bunch of gravity did the trick. I should add that it was good he was wearing clothes. The scrapes he would have gotten in rather delicate places would have hurt something fierce. After his pseudo-fall, he just lay there, groaning. While I felt for him, it was also difficult to feel too badly for him. He was the one who'd gotten drunk, wandered onto my property, climbed the tree, and spent the night there undressed. So after waiting for what I thought was an adequate amount of time, I strode over and handed him his enriched tea. He took a sip, made a face, then set it aside. Gah! What's that taste? Don't you hear of any wine or beer? Something that doesn't taste like ashes? Now, I knew I had honey at my disposal, but I opted not to use it. Instead, I just told him that the only way the potion would work was if he downed it all in one go. He made a face at me, grimaced at the cup, clearly contemplated deliberately spilling it, then held his nose and downed it. I sipped my tea as the medicinal one worked its healing magic. As I continued to sip, his groaning stopped and his body uncoiled, no longer trying to hold itself still. I still hadn't finished my cup by the time he was standing upright, looking far less gray and not in imminent danger of vomiting. In fact, he looked at the stream almost eagerly. Would you mind if I... He gestured towards the water. I shrugged. Come to the cottage when you're done. I'll have a warm towel ready so you can dry off. As I carried the empty cups back home, I heard the telltale splashing of someone bathing. Knowing my last patient was occupied, I looked for and found Mouse-Eye, who jumped from a low-hanging branch onto my shoulder. Do you know who that is? Mm-hmm. Care to share? No. And may I know why you won't share? No. Sometimes I wonder what life would have been like if our roles were reversed, with me as the familiar and Mouse-Eye as the witch. Would I find as much pleasure in withholding information as a certain rodent finds it? But since something like that happening was about as likely as a tree growing upside down, I don't usually dwell on the thought. But today was an unusual day. I got a towel heated, as promised, and then puttered about until my mystery patient arrived to warm up. It didn't take long for him to arrive. The stream runs cold. And eventually he was sitting in front of the fire, bundled and finally in a condition where he was ready to talk. I decided to start off. I'm Mistress Sweetwater, the current witch and occupant of this witch's cottage, although that wasn't the name you used when you first enrolled in the herbology school. He looked at me, watching to see how I'd react to his knowing all that about me. I managed to not react. You have the advantage of me. Please tell me who you are. He sat up straighter, trying to look more impressive. I'm the Lord Mayor of High Rannoch. Now things were starting to strike me as funny. The Lord Mayor of High Rannoch was sitting in front of my fire, steam gently rising from his head, wrapped in a towel. I started giggling. What is so funny, young lady? I am a highly respected figure in this community, whereas you, I've heard a thing or two about you. That stopped the giggles and brought out the outrage. What was funny was seeing you, the Lord Mayor, warming yourself in front of my fire after washing off the last of last night's excess. What is no longer funny is you threatening me in my home, particularly after brewing you a potion. So now, if the Lord Mayor would deign to pay the witch the 20 silver due, he may then leave. He didn't seem to hear me. Madame Wintergleam says you lack discipline and decorum, that you lack the character needed to be a witch. How would she know what's needed? All those students are trapped inside the school's walls. To the degree that you assaulted a current student of the school, nearly piercing his, tender bit, in self-defense after he assaulted me, and from what I've seen, you lack the requisite requirements to inhabit this cottage. So who's trying to toss me out? I think I'll grant the doctor his request to take over here and turn it into a health retreat center. The doctor, of course. Things got awfully quiet at that point. I was ready to do something. I had no idea what I was ready to do, but the one thing I wasn't going to do was back down. For his part, he wasn't angry or even emotional. He was just watching for me to do or say something stupid, like cry or beg. Neither was going to happen. Ahem. We both turned towards the mantelpiece. Mouse-Eye was standing on his hind feet. I do believe, Oliver Chutney, Lord Mayor of High Rannoch, said the Lord Mayor of High Rannoch, that you are currently sitting, cured of your hangover, inside a cottage that was deeded to itself, meaning you have no authority to do anything to my mistress, this residence, or these grounds. Further, while you can cherry-pick opinions that aren't favorable to my mistress, I think you'll find that the only opinion here concerning you is currently quite negative. And if it were revealed just how inebriated you were last night, how hungover you were this morning, and that you spat upon the current witch's hospitality, care, and cure, I think you'll lose what little respect people have for you. And trust me when I say I'll make sure that becomes the talk of the town. It got quiet again. I tried my best to not tear up as Mouse-Eye defended me. Instead, I just stood upright, haughtily even, with a small grin on my face. I take it this is Mortimer. I believe there is more to the elaborate name than Madame Hightower's domestic. Francie, I supplied, couldn't quite remember. Mouse-Eye bowed. Oliver looked back and forth at Mouse-Eye and I. You're quite the formidable pair. And yes, I've heard good things too. So how about this? We don't talk about my whereabouts or condition over the past 24 hours, and I'll leave you in peace and allow you to do your work as you see fit. I translated his offer in my head. He'll give me what I already have in exchange for maintaining patient confidentiality, which he already has. I shot a questioning look at Mouse-Eye with a small shrug of acceptance. He did the same back. Accepted, but you will pay for that hangover cure before you leave. He raised his hands in surrender, then sought out his money pouch. As the coins were placed on the table, the mayor said, I'm glad High Rannoch has a strong and knowledgeable witch, and, frankly, quite scary when riled. I trust you'll remember our agreement. I simply nodded. He nodded back. Good day to you, Mistress Mortimer. And he left. I waited impatiently for 10 minutes to pass before the primal scream that had been brewing was allowed out. While there were words of rage and frustration in there, mostly it was just white-hot pure emotion that poured forth. That felt good to just let it release. And after a wash in the cold stream and then a thaw in front of the fire, I felt renewed, still angry, but fresh and capable and strong. And then I found Mouse-Eye, got him into the palm of my hand, and kissed his head. He blushed, I think. So, what else shall we do today? He asked. I needed to work out my frustrations with more than just one good lungful of vocal release. I needed a walk. No, more than that. I needed full body exertion. I needed some time out in nature, and if it meant I could gather a reagent or two, I'd take that as part of the package deal. I needed to spend some time with Miss Bogfire and Blastfire Bog. At the very least, I could replenish my crow coal. Crow coal. The first reagent I'd ever gathered had just been used. Gosh, that was a trigger to some self-reflection. The me of 8 weeks ago had gathered something, having no clue that the me of today would use it as a hangover remedy. Funny how that worked out. I rushed through the remaining bits of my morning routine so that I could be gone for as long as I could manage, or at least for as long as I wanted. Who knows, the me of an hour from now might be very ready to come back to the cottage. As we walked to Kunks's Landing, my name for the dock next to the industrious bog goblin who made not just Miss Bogfire, but all of her watercraft siblings, I wondered how Mouse-Eye had known so much about the legal status of the cottage and the current political climate for the mayor. I knew if I asked, I'd be told that he watches. I guess what I really wanted to know is not so much what he watches, but how he does. How can he know about things that he, presumably, wasn't here for? What else has he watched? Or, correction to that last question, what else does he know? Does he know about my life prior to being a witch? Does he know about the old witch? Does he know Pip? I suppose as time and tide dictate, I'll find out. Or not. The walk to the bog did me good. My head was clearer, my body warmed up and ready to go for a paddle, and my sense of adventure was prepped to head out and explore. Kunk, too, was in a good mood when I arrived at the dock. "Ha! You here! Good day! Sun here! Fish jump! Good day!" Together, we put my coracle in the water. As I paddled down a channel, Kunk waved before setting to work again. Trusting that Mouse Eye could direct me home, I just went where my mood sent me, through wide open channels one minute, then down nearly choked off passages the next. It was maybe a couple of hours before I decided that I needed a bit of a break and headed for a piece of dry land dominated by a tall tree. The shade was super inviting. Pulling my boat up and securing it to the huge trunk ensured my boat, and my only way back home, absent a very mucky and long swim, was secure. I laid back, watched the clouds, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. I breathed in the sun and breathed out anger. I breathed in serenity and breathed out disquiet. I breathed in light and breathed out gray smoke. Not literally, of course. In all of this, I may have dozed off. Probably dozed off. I dozed off. Mouse Eye says I snored loud enough to prevent anyone else from catching a few Z's. What finally brought me out of my reverie was the cawing of crows who just flown onto a branch of the tree. When I looked up at them, I spotted the nest I'd missed seeing before now. This might be a chance to get some coal. Unlike the last time when I'd been lucky enough to spy some on the ground, this time I was going to have to negotiate with these birds. The thing to know about crows is that they are some of the most obnoxious and rude birds around. The only reason harpies have the rotten reputation that they do is that they speak human. Crows don't bother speaking in any other language but their own and can still leave you feeling massively insulted. I managed to climb up to a level where I could converse with the birds and did my best to ask for some of their crow coal. I offered to do a trade. I said I could recite poetry or sing a song. They started cawing viciously. There was no physical threat, but they'd let me have it verbally. I'd guarded against exactly this, but still, some words, some feelings got through. Whoever it was that said that sticks and stones can break bones, but words can't hurt you, never met crows. I did eventually get the coal because a crow, in frustration at my not leaving, flung it at me. Correction, towards me. If it had been at me, it might have been okay. I could have caught it or somehow trapped it with my body, but the throw was only roughly in my direction. In my excitement of trying to catch it, which I did, yay me, I overleaned and fell off the branch. Luck was with me in that I fell onto a soft landing spot, a rotting soft log that kept me from landing heavily on the ground. The giant puff of mushroom spores that erupted out of the log was like a fog, and I breathed in a giant lungful. Of a sudden, I was both myself and yet something more. I suppose I became a part of the mushroom network, seeing and feeling and knowing things about the bog that I had no other way of knowing. I sensed individual plants growing, troops of ants bringing home food from distant lands along well-worn tracks, roots seeking water and nutrients and the pumping of vital fluids along stalks, branches, and trunks. I was a part of the bog, and it was a part of me. Harmonized being. Oneness. Totality. Somewhere in all of that, I felt a gentle yet insistent tapping on my right cheek. "Sweet, we need to get moving. It's getting late." I opened my eyes and met the concerned look of Mouse Eye. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath and remembered what happened on my last deep breath. Mouse Eye seemed to know my concern. "It's safe. I think you've made sure there won't be any new mushrooms anywhere near here. A kilometer or two away? Yes, but not here." He smiled as he said it. I believe it was a smile of relief. Broken pictures of the vision I'd had kept forcing their way into my consciousness. I started to get up, perhaps too quickly. "Take your time. You're awake, and that's good, but take a minute before we do anything else." I forced myself to take that needed minute, but I wasn't happy doing it. I felt the need to move. I had to move. There were things I wanted to do, needed to do before I lost all memory of what I'd seen. Going to Miss Bogfire, I untied her, jumped in, and started to get ready to paddle. I'd offer to get us home, but you know. Mouse-Eye held up his little mouse arms and flecked his paws. It's okay. I know where I'm going. And we set off, deeper into the bog. Home's that way. Mouse-Eye pointed to a channel I wasn't going to go down. Yep, I know, but we're going this way. I paddled with what felt like the strength of 10 strong men. Okay. Mouse-Eye started to nervously flit around on the boat, looking this way and that, clearly unsure of what I was up to. To be honest, I wasn't sure of what I was doing either. I just felt the need to paddle. The coracle seemed to know the way. We headed deeper and deeper into the bog until we nearly reached a place where bog and Glimmerwood Grove met. I hopped out, almost forgot to tie off the line, then sprinted towards a grove of oak trees. Mouse-Eye got there first. Here's some shield cap, although why we needed to come all the way here, I'm sure I don't know. I ignored him and swept past. I wouldn't talk. I knew what I was looking for was close. It took a few minutes of digging through undergrowth to pull out my prize. Amethyst antlers. It was a huge rack. The ancient deer that dropped these must have been magnificent. Mouse-Eye just gasped. Why? I heard him stammer his questions, but I couldn't answer. The feeling of another reagent somewhere else in the bog was calling to me. Answering Mouse-Eye's questions would have broken the spell. I just hauled the antlers into the coracle and made ready to paddle. What vision of the here and now I had showed me, Mouse-Eye was still standing by the shield caps, arms crossed, muttering to himself. I couldn't wait, but didn't want to leave him behind, so I jumped out, grabbed semi-blindly at both my confused familiar and the mushrooms. I somehow grabbed both, raced back to the boat, and we headed off again. Where are we headed now? Looking back, I've never heard Mouse-Eye sound so uncertain. It would have been hysterical if I hadn't been so focused on the next destination. All I could manage was a quick shake of the head, asking that questions be held until the appropriate Q&A period, which wasn't now. I paddled, the coracle steered, the sun set. I paddled, the coracle steered, the night deepened. I paddled, the coracle landed on a bit of land. The shadows cast by the rising moon shaped the darkness into fuzzy blobs of midnight outlined by silvery glints of dew-covered foliage. I stumbled out and pretty much beelined towards a large tree. I sloshed and splashed, heedless of what was in my way, whether plant, animal, or water channel. Thankfully, nothing too deep, although I did go waist-high on one step. While I didn't know what they were called then, I now know they were called grunblut limpets. And within their thick shells, which were open to allow the moonlight in, sat midnight morsels. I scooped some out, stored them in my kit, and then felt the raging fire of need and motivation drain out of me. I was exhausted, trembling, absolutely knackered. Mouse-Eye appeared on my shoulder and to his credit talked me back to Miss Bogfire, even leading me down a much better path that involved a lot less immersion. At the boat, I was a mess. I wanted to go home, but didn't have the strength to even attempt it. Mouse-Eye talked me through getting into the coracle and pushing off. I more or less collapsed into the bottom of the boat. You sleep, we'll be fine, I'll keep watch, I remember hearing him say. And then, I think I was dreaming, or maybe it was more than a dream. It started with me in my cottage. It's still a bit strange to claim ownership of it. Sitting in front of the fire with the spirit house sitting on the mantelpiece. And as I watched, the spirit house got closer and closer, bigger and bigger, until I was in it, through it, and looking out the other side. At the inside of a cottage that looked a bit like mine, but wasn't. And a girl, my age, maybe, but not me, talking to 3 ducks, named Mabel, Judy, and Julie. As I looked closer, I saw a familiar mousy face peer out from a pocket in her clothes, holding a chocolate chip cookie. I gasped, which drew the attention of a small owl who, with a flick of her wing, I felt rather than heard a snap. My vision swam for a minute, but then I saw yet another similar cottage, and yet another witch, and yet another setting, and then another, and then another, and another. They began to blur and speed past me, cottages and witches and familiars, all both somewhat familiar but also rather strange. I awoke with a whimper. My body ached, my head felt woozy, and my nose began informing me that we were still deep in the bog. "Welcome back." Mouse Eyes' look of concern helped warm my heart. "I'm guessing those mushroom spores did a number on you." I nodded, stretched, yawned. "Are you feeling okay?" I nodded again, then mumbled, "Yeah." Then, "I think I'm ready to get us home if you're up to navigating." "Ready, willing, and able, Captain." And thus began the slow and careful trip home in the dark. As I paddled, I figured a bit of conversation would help pass the time. So I told Mouseye about what I'd felt and seen since being dosed with mushroom spores. Mouseye listened politely, asked questions here and there. When I asked him about his eating what I presumed was one of Pips's chocolate chip cookies, he got a bit quiet. And when I asked him to share with his favorite witch the next time he went there, and certainly not expecting any sort of answer because it had been just a dream, right? He actually blushed in embarrassment before giving me an abashed, "Must I?" And that is the end of the episode. I don't know about you, but after reading that story, I'm ready for a little breathing and stretching. So let's sit up, take a nice deep breath. Here we go. And a bit of stretch. Okay, that felt good. All right, let us talk about now how the episode came together, the creative mixing bowl. And the first thing is the prompts, and I'm going to bring up the sheet here. Here we go. Whoops. Still never get the arrows right on the first go. So give that a screenshot, and 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. Here we are. Okay. Let's go over a couple of things, some details about this Cure episode. So it is a Cure episode. So yeah, we do have some guidebook prompts. So the first thing to note that I want to talk about is hangover. Now, hangover itself is an ailment that comes off of the novice table. That is the level 1 table. So there's 4 levels of tables. And Alicia and I, we exited relatively quickly. I think it was only like 3 ailments that we did in that table before we moved on to the intermediate. And the thing about doing something like that is that the table only has 13 ailments for any given level. And once you're in advanced, in these more advanced tables, it's going to take you probably at least 10 cures, successful cures, in order to advance into even the next table. So the chance of having things repeat, because you randomly pull a card to see what it is that your ailment's going to be, odds go up and up and up that you're going to end up repeating. And we didn't want to repeat. And in the past, we have even gone more advanced with a ailment into the next level table. This time we opted to go backwards. So we did the novice table. So the thing about that, with the guidebook, the Apothecaria guidebook, it says that if you were not operating in your current top tier table, so like we just did, you don't get a reputation point. Not sure that I understand the reason why that mechanic is in there. And we didn't take the reputation point in this game. But it's just one of those things where it's like, you cured somebody, you think you get something for it, and you do, you get paid, but you would think you get a little bit of reputation as well. According to the guidebook, you don't. And so we opted to not take the reputation. Okay, so as to who was the patient, I had never made mention of the mayor, and it's been a couple of months that Mr. Sweetwater has been operating in the area. I thought it was about time. Also, we had, quite discussed Count von Ronach. So he's kind of out there. He's in Heroes Hollow, and but I've never talked about the mayor. So I've never talked about the official governance of the town. Only sort of the one person who has taken on the name. So I wanted to bring the mayor in. And as I was thinking about the mayor, I wanted to start setting him up as a bad guy. And so one of the ways to do that is to put him into a position where he's acting like a calculating politician and using his power in a way that is uncomfortable. At least I think it's uncomfortable. So so this is sort of an introduction to the mayor and him being a antagonist is the word. So your main character, the one that you're rooting for, is the protagonist, and then the one that you fight against is the antagonist. Okay. So let's see now here. So generally, again, according to the guidebook, potions consist of 2 or more reagents. Potions do not consist of a single reagent. However, number 1, guideline. Number 2, since we weren't going to earn reputation points on this one anyway, and Crowcole handily handles both symptoms, why not? So we really didn't see the need to put forth a whole lot of effort to not getting any reputation. Yeah, you get paid, but okay, whatever. I mean, I didn't even give the guy honey. I could have got an extra 10 out of him for that, but no, you make him drink the ashy taste of the Crowcole. Okay, so moving on into what's been written before. So 2 small things. So the first thing here is that, again, we have talked about Count von Ranach, never about the mayor. And so it was time to write him in and start to set up a bit of conflict. And the other thing is the here yet not here has been mentioned in a couple of times, and with some of its curiosities, the ability to transport money, Mouse Eye seems to be able to traverse it, at least to some degree. So I thought it'd be more fun, or it'd be fun to explore more, and this time it's under the influence of mushrooms. And now to the imagination piece. So I wrote the hungover mayor in a way to highlight the treatment that many women receive when confronting powerful men. So men can abuse their power and get away with it. Women, their reputations are getting sullied just even for trying to help out. So I'm not a big fan of that. So that's why that goes into this episode. Anyways, this starts a storyline that goes through to the end of the series. I did make mention that Apothecaria does come to an end at some point in a few episodes, several episodes. So yeah, but this will continue through to the end. And I didn't have an idea as to how exactly it was going to play out, but I did have sort of this notion that things were going to make their way through one way or another. And I'm not quite sure what it is that I'm trying to say exactly with that, other than it's pantser writing. And so pantser writing is one of those joys of you don't know what's going on as you're writing it down on the page, or maybe you're writing it down and you come up for a breath for a second and you get like the next vision and you're like, oh, that's what we're going to do. And you start writing that down. So you're not really, sometimes you're not really even part of what's going on with the story development. You're just kind of like getting it in your head, and then you're just putting it down on the page, and you get to discover it first, and then you get to share it with everybody else. Also, with the mushroom bit, this is the first little teaser, the first little hint as to the nature of Mistress Sweetwater herself. Yes, there's more than meets the eye, more than what I've talked about so far, and we shall definitely hear more and more before this story concludes. Okay, next bit. In the exploration of the here yet not here, I wanted to reference Alicia's story and game. For instance, I knew that Pip lives in a cottage similar to Sweets's and that she has 3 ducks as friends and a familiar who is an owl. And that owl is rather demanding, to put it nicely. Yeah, she's a tough one. She's a tough one. And to be more exact, Alicia is the familiar of the owl, and the owl is a transformed human witch. And so, but the owl still has the ability to transport Alicia from place to place, and she does so using these very loud snaps. In fact, when she's writing it in her book, like, you know, she's writing in these tiny little micro lines and things on her page, and then giant snap. And like, okay, you get the idea that there's something big going on there. Anyways, yeah. So things are kind of convoluted over in Alicia world in regards to Apothecaria. So I did want to make a mention and make a reference, both for myself as a bit of a reminder as to what's going on over there, and then it's just fun to relate it. So yeah, that's why it's in there. Last thing to mention here is Mouse Eye has been the one who's been in control of the knowledge and power, and Sweet has essentially been at his mercy. This episode twists it just a little bit so that she knows what's going on, or kind of knows, and Mouse Eye has no clue, but he's also not heading off, right? He could easily just jump out of scene and that's it. He's gone. No, he's there. He's keeping an eye on things, just not sure what is happening. So I thought that was kind of a fun thing to put Mouse Eye on the back foot and have him trying to figure out what is going on, and to play the protector as well. He guards her body when she's knocked out. He helps to get her home. Still, yes, he's got his humor and he's got his things that he does, but yeah, showing more resilience and more loyalty than maybe we've seen from Mouse Eye before. And that brings us to the Pantser section. And I want to talk about conflict without combat. Now, consider 2 neighbors. Just a story, even, with 2 neighbors. They don't like each other. They don't like what each other is doing on their own property. They're in conflict. But they never fight. They never fight with fists or swords or, you know, nuclear weapons or whatever. They know that if they do bloody each other's nose, that will inflame the enmity, and we don't want to have that happen. We don't want to have the cops called out. So this is conflict without combat, and so we can view it as combat, but as not physical combat, but as combat through wits, or legal and political maneuvers, other means and methods. No blood is spilled, but their reputations can be ruined, costs can be incurred and exacerbated. Even just getting under the skin of the other one can be taken as a type of victory. And unlike a combat/battle, this type of conflict can drag on for a very long time. I mean, entire TV series have been written about just having 2 people together living in conflict. When I was growing up, there was a show called The Odd Couple. One guy was slovenly and would drink beer and throw his cans all over the place, and the other guy was neat and dapper, and he'd only sip martinis and stuff like that. And they ended up living together in the same New York apartment, and yeah, conflict. Wherever they went, there was always two opposing views onto things. So for anyone who feels like they want to be able to write some sort of conflict, just keep in mind, you don't need combat. You don't need people taking swings at each other in order to demonstrate conflict. You just have to have differing, actions that follow from people just disagreeing and not liking each other and doing things to get each other's goat. Okay. And that does it for today's video. So let me bring us over to the Drawing Expressions Haiku, which is a creative space, holistically supportive. Please like, share, subscribe. And thank you oh so much for joining me on this adventure, this journey. And I hope to see you again for another episode in 2 weeks' time. Until then, bye for now.